Hi, so today we're going to talk about Wise Mind. This is part of the foundation skills for DBT. So it's something we usually go through before the start of a new module. We keep coming back to Wise Mind, as you'll notice in group and with your one-to-one therapist. It's something that's really important across all of the different DBT skills. So when we're talking about trying to have better relationships with others, Wise Mind is important. When we're talking about trying to cope with strong emotions or also maybe accept these emotions in the emotion regulation module, Wise Mind's important. And when we're talking about distress tolerance, when things feel really hard, when you might act on urges to harm yourself, other target behaviors, Wise Mind's also important. So that's what we're going to go to today. So if you go to your handout, there's it says Mindfulness Handout 3, which says Wise Mind, States of Mind. So that's on page 11 for the DBTers in Portsmouth. I'll say a little bit more about what Wise Mind means. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through what Wise Mind is about and an example of making a Wise Mind decision. So let's talk about the different states of mind that we talk about in DBT. It's something we keep coming back to, and it's a really helpful way to think about making decisions. It's a really helpful way to try and resist the urge to self-harm, improve relationships, all the other skills which we're using. Wise mind is important for these. So reasonable mind. What do we mean by reasonable mind? So we all have one. It's where you're rational, you're very sort of logical, cool-headed, calm, collected. Sometimes people think of it like being a bit like a computer, the kind of calculating, logical part of your mind. Focusing on facts, practicalities, being quite kind of pragmatic when you're making decisions. So really just that kind of cool logic, problem solving kind of mind, which we do all have. Emotion mind, as it suggests by the name, the emotions are more in the driving seat. Okay, so you're more at the whim of your emotions. They dictate your decisions. You're led by these kind of feelings, and your mood really has a bigger impact on what you do and the decisions you'll make, the moods you're in at the moment. As a result, you're often more impulsive when you're in emotion mind. And you can probably think about this if you think about some of the things we do when we regret, when we're angry, or some of the target behaviors you might do, drinking too much or self-harm. They're often maybe in emotion mind when you feel like you can't cope or you're feeling very anxious, very distressed. Often it leads to these behaviors that you might come to regret. So when you're in emotion mind, you're kind of ruled by your mood, your feelings, the urges. Okay, so the reasonable mind, that kind of logical, practical, cool-headed decision making, isn't in the driving seat. And what's wise mind? Now, there's pros and cons to both the reasonable mind and the emotion mind. We're not saying that either is right or either is wrong. We're not saying you should never be in reasonable mind because it's important. But we're not saying that you should never be in emotion mind. Yes, it can cause problems sometimes, but equally, if you made all your decisions purely on the basis of logic without thinking about emotions and how it makes you feel and other people, that's also going to cause you problems. So nothing's wrong with either of them. It's just trying to take into account both sides. And this is where wise mind comes in. And this is really the dialectic, the D in DBT, is taking into account both sides, and what your reasonable mind and your emotion mind are telling you might seem like two very different things, but actually there's probably truth in both of them, and you can listen to both sides. And that is what wise mind is. It's listening to both the emotion mind and the reasonable rational mind. So it's, some people might think of it as wisdom or intuition or a gut feeling. So it's just something that doesn't feel right, or this does feel like the right decision. Like a middle way between what your reasonable mind might be saying and your emotion mind might be saying. So it's seeing the value, the importance of listening to both sides of this, coming for a middle way. So it's kind of like a bit of a compromise, listening to both sides and taking both into account. Just to kind of illustrate in picture form, I like to think of the reasonable mind, as I said, like a computer, sort of cool logic. Got a picture of a brain there because I think sometimes people, there's an old saying of like the head and the heart, and I think that applies here. You know, what's your head saying? Whereas the emotion mind, it's more, to use that old phrase again, what your heart is saying. might be more anger driven or hot emotion driven. It's very sort of hot, it's very kind of like maybe short-term emotions. Wise mind you can think of as balance, or you can think of it as the kind of thinking logical, the thinking wisdom side of both. So let's just give an example. It's one that some of you listening to this might have had in your past. Decision, I want to leave my job, or do I want to leave my job? Okay, so thinking about whether you want to leave your job. So doing this, actually drawing this out, wise mind circles, is something that can really help make decisions. We use it in DBT consults sometimes when we're struggling as therapists. And I'm going to ask you after this to try and do your own. So let's just say reasonable mind, the kind of more rational, cool side of things. It might be more the pragmatic, the practicalities, the sort of facts of it. So it might be, well, my current job is quite stable. It's quite stable. My salary is good. My salary is okay. And the hours work well for me. So the more kind of just practical, this is kind of good at the moment. Maybe I don't want to lose these practicalities, these good things. Your emotion mind might be saying something different. It might be saying, well, I'm just not happy where I am. Maybe I don't enjoy my job, or maybe I don't get on as well with my colleagues. I'm just not, that kind of, I'm not feeling it, So my head says it's the right for me, but on another level, an emotional level, my heart is saying that maybe this isn't right. I don't enjoy it, and maybe I want to try something new. So again, it's like your head is saying one thing, your heart is saying another. And you've probably all been in similar sort of decisions before where you feel a little bit torn maybe between, is this the right call or not? And it's almost like you can see that one part is true and another part is true. And we're not saying here that it either is that one side is right, one side is wrong. It's actually about trying to listen to both sides, because there is truth. In this example here, there is truth in both sides. So maybe a wise mind decision might be taking into account both, something like, it's a risk to leave my job, and maybe it's the best thing for me. So maybe it is a little bit of a risk to leave this kind of steady job, and maybe for my mental being, it's a good call at the moment. Okay, so that was just an example of using wise mind, these wise mind circles, to help you make a decision where maybe you do feel a bit torn, you're not sure what the right decision is. So what I want you to just do now is I want you to draw out those wise mind circles, emotion mind, rational mind, wise mind, and I want you to think about a decision that you're having to make at the moment. It might be a decision about a relationship, or a decision about something at work, or you can start with something quite minor, like, what am I going to eat tonight? Because there's rational mind saying I need to eat healthily, and there might be emotion mind saying I want pizza. So I want you to just think about that, and I want you to write out the emotion mind, the rational mind of things. If you're struggling, then you can always ring a DBT therapist for help, but it might help you to try and just think about, again, what's my head saying, what's my heart saying. Okay, so just do that, pause the video, spend about 5 minutes on it, and then at the end I want you to try and come to a wise mind decision which takes into account both. Okay, go. Okay, so let's think about some ways to help you get into wise mind. And a lot of the emotional coping skills, distress tolerance skills we're talking about do help you get into wise mind. When you're really distressed, when you're thinking about acting a target behavior, you're really angry, arguing with someone, it is hard to connect with that more rational, reasonable mind part and get into wise mind. So those help you get into it. But I just thought it'd be helpful to think about a few questions to ask yourself about, to try and work out, am I in wise mind? Was this a wise mind decision? And I do this, I use this myself, because we all have emotion mind, and sometimes I use these kind of questions, and we do with the DBT team, to try and think about, what is the wise mind decision here? Did I make the right decision, the wise mind decision? Okay. So number one, would I think differently about this if I was calmer? Would I see it in the same way if those emotions were down? Has this idea, has this urge come to me really quickly or impulsively? Might suggest it's a bit more emotion mind. I certainly use that. Is this an idea I've thought about for a while, or has it suddenly popped into my head? How will I see this looking back? An hour's time, a week's time, a month's time, a year's time, how will I look back on this? Will I feel like this was the right thing to do? Going back to that old phrase as well, am I listening to my head and my heart? Am I listening to both? Does this decision feel right for me? That kind of gut instinct that people sometimes talk about when something doesn't feel right, even if you can't quite name it. That maybe is wise mind. Will this help me or will it cause problems? Okay, so a lot of the target behaviors, we discussed, they might help for a little bit, they might reduce emotions initially, but in the long run, they cause a load of other problems. So that's a question to ask yourself, am I acting wisely? Is this going to help me in the long run? If it isn't going to help you in the long run, it's probably more likely emotion mind, because that's when you do things when you're impulsive, you don't really think about the long-term consequences. Some people also find that mindfulness is a really helpful way to get into wise mind because you're connecting with maybe what you're noticing in your body in terms of emotion mind, but also the thoughts, the more kind of reasonable, rational mind, and you're not being pulled too much either way. You're trying to connect with both to make that wise mind decision. Some people like doing something along the lines of breathing out. Say to yourself, wise. Then when you're breathing in, mind, because that helps calm. So maybe it helps you get into touch with wise mind. So when you breathe out, wise mind, just doing that. Some people find it's helpful just to kind of pause in between those breaths and just kind of notice. So really deep, slow breathing and just notice, and that might help you get in touch with wise mind, but also trying to expand your awareness. So not just focusing on one thing. This is why pressing the pause button, maybe doing a mindfulness exercise like a body scan can help, because you're noticing what your body's telling you, physical sensations, but you're also noticing what thoughts you have, what worries you have about the future. So trying to expand your awareness rather than just focusing on one little bit. So finally today we're going to try a brief wise mind mindfulness exercise to try and help you get in touch with wise mind. Okay, so just find a comfortable place to sit, somewhere where you won't be disturbed, hopefully. Try and turn off any distracting sounds. Close your eyes if that's comfortable. So I want you to just focus on really slow, deep breaths initially. And I want you to locate the bottom of your sternum, so the bottom of your rib cage. So you can do this by touching the bone at the center of your chest and then following it down towards your abdomen where the bone ends, so just above your stomach. And place one hand on your abdomen between the bottom of your sternum and your belly button. This is the center of wise mind. Take a few slow, long breaths and relax. Now slowly breathe in through your nose and then slowly exhale through your mouth. Feel your abdomen rise and fall as you breathe. Imagine your belly filling up with air like a balloon as you breathe in, and then let it deflate. Feel it deflate as you breathe out. Feel the breath moving in across your nostrils, and then feel your breath blowing out across your lips. As you breathe, notice any sensations in your body. Feel your lungs fill up with air. Notice the weight of your body as it rests on the seat in which you're sitting. With each breath, notice how your body feels and allow your body to become more and more relaxed. Now, as you continue to breathe, let your attention focus on the spot underneath your hand. Let your attention focus on the center of wise mind. Continue to take slow, long breaths. If your mind wanders, if you have any distracting thoughts, just allow those thoughts to leave you without fighting them, without getting stuck in them, on them, or lost in them. Continue to breathe and focus on this center of wise mind, just feeling your hand resting on your stomach. As you're focusing your attention on the center of wise mind, just notice what happens. If you've had any troubling thoughts, problems, decisions that you have to make in your life, try and think about them for a few seconds now. Try and bring them to mind. Then ask your center of wise mind what you should do about these problems or about these decisions. Try not to judge whatever answers you get back. Just note them and keep breathing. Just continuing to focus your attention on the center of wise mind. If no thoughts or answers come to your questions, just notice the breathing, okay? Now continue to notice your breath rising and falling. Keep breathing and returning your focus to the center of wise mind until the timer goes off. If you set a timer, if not, just when you feel like you've finished, slowly open your eyes, focus back in the room. Okay. So a few questions, well done for doing that, a few questions to ask yourself now. What did it feel like when I connected with that? Did I feel like I was connecting with wise mind? How did that feel? When I brought these decisions or problems to mind and I was in that calm, wise mind place, what did I notice? Did I think about it any differently? Or might it be helpful for me to use this in the future? Try and just press the pause button, connect with wise mind, out of emotion mind into rational and then wise mind. How might this help me in the future? Okay, thank you very much for watching. We'll leave it there for this week. For homework, I'd like you to try and use this wise mind decision making circles, okay? So try and use wise mind to make a decision.